Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Welcome to Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I'm Kat Rusielka.
And I'm Jason Hondo Ling.
And we are back to review Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's finally come to an end, the finale, episode 6. I'm very excited to talk about the episode and talk about the series as a whole, and also where some of these characters might go next in sort of future Star Wars storytelling. Kat, I'm going to hand it over to you. You did such an awesome job last episode of taking the lead in the episode discussion while my throat was in bits, shall we say. So over to you. Enjoy it.
It's glad to have you healed, Pete, but Red 5 is standing by again, and we will be diving into full spoilers for Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 6. So if you haven't watched the episode, do not listen any further. Go watch it and come back to learn about all the Easter eggs, references, and things you might have missed. So without further ado, we're going to head straight to Tatooine, where we open to the busy, bustling streets of Anchorhead. And this is quite familiar from the first episode of Kenobi, with the rather grisly work manager from the fish butchery. He's being quite pushy to a local water seller. And I must admit, I was pretty happy when he had a taste of his own medicine, because on Tatooine, Reva has appeared. She has somehow managed to find the strength to get off Jabim and come to Tatooine in search of the boy that Bail Garner mentioned in the part of the hologram recording she saw in a previous episode. Hondo, what did you think of Reva's entrance?
I thought this was brilliant. Great introduction, like you say. The way she steps forward whilst this guy's just being a general idiot. And it was very much Reva at this point looks like a complete deranged lunatic about to pull the world apart. She thought she had everything sorted. She was so confident, and now she is a woman on the edge, ready to wreak revenge. And the whole scene played out, just as the right introduction. I was beginning to wonder, how's it going to play out when she gets to Tatooine? And obviously she's looking for Owen. And, you know, it's pretty clear that she's going to catch up with him. And obviously now the one thing that I did think was we all know Luke Skywalker's going to survive this. So there was a bit of a double-edged sword, because although Reva did feel like a real threat, at the same time we knew that Luke was going to be safe, a bit like we've always known Leia and Obi-Wan are going to be, because obviously we know what their future is. But the scene, it was classic Tatooine. the state of the city, Anchorhead, everything was just classic Star Wars and sets it up perfectly for Reva to go after Obi-Wan, go after Luke and Owen.
I definitely agree there about the point you make of, Reva does look like she's on the edge now. They did sort of a fabulous job with her hair is now very disheveled. She's lost that sort of imperial edge of sort of, there's harsh lines have been taken away, and she
And
looks much more desperate.
did you notice? I felt also there was some little knockbacks to Kylo Ren from The Force Awakens, where obviously she's been injured and she keeps going to the wound and pushing against it, similar to the way he kept, reacting to his wounds in that film.
Absolutely agree with that parallel. And yeah, you can see, she's very labored in her breathing, there's sweat across her brow. You can really see that physical pain she's in, and the fact that she's having to draw on the force just to keep herself going.
I
think one
still
of the things that I
say,
loved about. Go ahead, Jason.
I just want to put it out there straight away that for me, Moses Ingram has been a breakout performance in this series, and I've actually enjoyed her all the way through.
Pete, I think there was something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I think going back to what Jason was saying about the threat level and maybe being taken out of feeling the threat because of knowing people survive. I think throughout this episode, what I got was the fact that Obi-Wan was so far away throughout the episode, and then she's on the hunt here at the beginning. My thought process is always like, he's not going to get there in time, and yes, I know Luke's going to survive, but is she maybe going to take Luke, and do we end on a cliffhanger? And like season 2 is Obi-Wan going to save Luke. So I always had that, like, I felt the threat throughout because I was uncertain about how this was going to end. I knew he was going to survive, but I was like, is this going to end in with future turmoil to come? So I did feel the threat throughout the episode, from Moses being on Tatooine and hunting, and with Kenobi being elsewhere and trying to race back. So I was sort of very worried about the situation. We see Star Wars as poetry because it rhymes. I think Moses Ingram here looks very much like Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, the black with the brown robe and the hood up, and then reveals herself to the water merchant. And also, she looks very much like Anakin does in her flashbacks when he kills her friends in the Jedi Temple in Coruscant during Order 66. The dark, almost black robes he wears and the brown hood and the eyes. Very similar to how she looks here. So it's almost like she's sort of mirroring Anakin here. So she's looking to kill her child. That is what Anakin did, and is ultimately the thing that Anakin can't take back. So, she's looking to mirror that, and if she does that, then she's going to be forever on the dark side. So I liked how the costume sort of mirrored Anakin and Anakin's decision to do that, and there's no going back. Then she's on the same path here. But also like the fact that it mirrored Luke, and maybe she can make a right choice somewhere and can take it back if she doesn't go too far. I love the fact that this big bully who we've seen in the first episode at the fish market, at the fish factory, but I was also like, in that first episode we see Reva cutting hands off and stuff, but then here we sort of see her just using the force and pushing them out of the way to get some water. But I suppose she is injured. She's trying to get water to survive and stay alive. And again, one track mind, she's not worried about this bully. She's worried about getting to Owen's farm once she finds out where it is. I also love the fact that, speaking of no line or no moment being wasted in the series, because of her interaction with Owen in the first episode, when she hears Bail Organa talk about Owen on Tatooine with a boy, she's already spoke to Owen at the beginning. Owen said he's a moisture farmer. He owns a farm, says his family live on the farm with him. So all she needs to find out is where this Owen lives, and she's got it nailed on once she finds out. So I love how that scene actually wasn't just her being angry towards Owen, it was actually a huge plot point. Now we're here at the finale.
Picking up there on what you mentioned about the costuming, I think costuming is something that can often be overlooked, yet it's actually so key to the character development. And exactly as you said, she does look a lot like Anakin's silhouette in this. They've given her a fantastic cape with this big hood that really hides a lot of her face. And the costuming throughout this series has just been so good, because Obi-Wan's costume has gone from him not looking like a Jedi at all in these very like run down work clothes, and yet as he's progressed throughout the series, he's gone back to those layers that we associate with the Jedi. He's gone back to sort of a cape, and it's what a character wears ultimately says something about that character and where they're going. And I think a shout out to all the amazing people who make these costumes, because they add so much, and we don't even realize it half the time, just what we're picking up subconsciously through what a character is wearing. So back to Obi-Wan, because he is very far away. He's aboard the transport trying to escape the Empire with Roken and the rest of the Path refugees. The ship, in a turn very much like from The Empire Strikes Back, has its hyperdrive failing. And Roken says that the motivator is shot. And the Empire is definitely gaining, with the shields only going to last so long. Everybody on board is quite frightened naturally, and we get what has been one of my favourites scenes from this episode. Young Leia is comforting Corran and his mother with Lola. I love how she's staying calm in this moment. Everybody's very tense, very stressed, but Leia's just trying to do what she can with what she's got to try and make people feel a bit more secure and just a bit more relaxed. And I thought this was a very selfless act of Leia. You can sort of see a little bit of like perhaps Obi-Wan's Jedi influence on her. And you can already see like the kind of leader she's going to be making. She's very calm, even in a stressful situation, much like Leia will be, aboard the Death Star and her other adventures later on throughout the series. What do we think of Leia in this moment?
I just want to go back to before we go into Leia. Obviously, we see the Empire in pursuit, of Obi-Wan and his crew. We talk about how costumes can sort of be subtly reference things that we've seen before or mirror where people are going. And I think here, straight away the music kicks in with a little bit of TIE Pursuit from A New Hope, and then it sort of mixes into sort of the track that's there, which reminded me a lot of A New Hope and the TIEs pursuing the Falcon. TIE Pursuit's also used again in the Last Jedi soundtrack when the TIEs are chasing the Falcon and Rey's shooting them before they land, and Rey moves the rocks to see everybody at the end of the Last Jedi. So yeah, I got a big feel for that, and they just subtly sprinkle that in at the beginning, a little bit of TIE Pursuit from John Williams, and then also the way the Star Destroyer is shooting at them, the way the ship's moving. Obviously, there isn't any asteroids there, but it did remind me of Empire Strikes Back and the Star Destroyer hunting the Millennium Falcon through the asteroid field. So again, Star Wars is poetry; it rhymes. Very, very similar feelings coming from just those similar images and similar sounds, and similar costumes that we've seen. So the whole show is sort of, the way things look, the way things sound, the imagery, it's all pulling together to sort of give us this Star Wars universe that we all love. And then on board, obviously tensions are high. Yeah, I think seeing Leia be calm, cool, collected, sort of not worrying about herself. She is obviously scared, I think, but she's sort of not dealing with that at the minute. She sort of put that aside, and she's helping others in this moment to feel a bit safer, making them feel a bit happier. And I think that's just wonderful to see, because that's where, ultimately where she's going to go as a leader, is she's going to be doing the same thing as a leader. She's going to be helping people pull through the struggles, and help people stand up and be counted.
Yeah, for me, the not only the similarities of like the previous space battles, but another one that stuck to me was from The Last Jedi, where they're being chased by Hux and they're just out of reach, and that's how it reminded me then of the chase almost there of the ship. So it's like you say, it's poetry. We've seen it all the way through the series, different films, the same sort of thing but played out slightly differently. Um, and Princess Leia, Leia is showing the attributes that we know her to have as the leader that she's going to be. And just to see how cool and calm she is in this situation perfectly shows, exactly how she's going to be when we first meet her on the Death Star. The other thing about the leadership thing is the conversation that Obi-Wan then has with Roken, and I am convinced that this has lined him up to be a character in the new Andor series, and I think this character could be revisited in the future. I just it sort of would be perfect then to see the progression of the rebels and how they've gone from the path onto the Rebel Alliance sort of thing. I just felt that that was teased by the way Obi-Wan told him that they needed leaders. Um, and that was what I think this was leading to.
Roken has been such a great character because he's been very grounded. He's wanted to help his people, and he's taken in anybody who wants to flee the Empire. You can see there's a mixture of humans and aliens aboard the ship, and I think he would definitely be fantastic as a cameo in Andor. And I certainly think he could now appear in some of the comics, because there's a lot of potential there with his storyline. There's also the potential sort of to give Roken more backstory, because he does say that his partner was a Force user and they were taken by the Inquisitors. So there's clearly a lot of heartbreak in his past too.
Definitely.
Actually, that Star Destroyer, I don't know what it was. You mentioned that sort of parallel to The Last Jedi when Hux was chasing the Resistance. This Star Destroyer felt extremely real to me. I don't know what it was. I was trying to figure out if it was actually a model or if it was CGI, because if it was fully CGI, they made it look so incredibly like the models used in the original trilogy that the similarity is unbelievable.
I thought there were some beautiful shots where, we saw shots of the Star Destroyer chasing our characters, our heroes, but we also saw a lot of shots of just the Star Destroyer where it was shooting lasers, but the focus was on the Star Destroyer itself, which I think we don't get a lot of. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like it seemed very ominous, and it felt large, and it felt dangerous, and it felt real. Because of the time spent, it was just seconds, but just seconds on just the awe of this super cruiser, essentially, this Star Destroyer. So yeah, I definitely got that feeling of like that threat was huge, and that's why all the people on board the ship are, Kenobi, please stay. Like, no, he needs to leave, because like this ship is gonna wipe you out, and if the ship doesn't destroy you, when Vader's boarding party boards, he'll definitely destroy you. So there is only one choice, and it is for Kenobi to be the bait and lead them away. And I felt they got that across brilliantly with how they shot that Star Destroyer moving.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
And like every hero, Obi-Wan believes that he must go it alone and go off to face Vader alone. This gave me Return of the Jedi vibes completely. This felt like Luke saying he had to go and face Vader alone, and Obi-Wan here wants to do the exact same thing. He says to the Path refugees and Roken, you've protected the Jedi for 10 years now. let me return the favor. And I thought him going off to sort of sacrifice himself, all of this just felt so powerful. This is Obi-Wan back to being sort of the prime strong Jedi that he was during the prequels. And it was so heroic, but it was also so heartbreaking because, Leia's worried for him, Roken's worried for him, even though he's only spent a relatively short amount of time with these people. They care for him so much, and he cares for them. And the lines were so beautiful. It was a beautiful bit of writing. Now, while Obi-Wan is preparing to go, we then cut back to Tatooine. I didn't think that actually this sort of cutting and changing would work between sort of Obi-Wan's path and Reva's path, but actually the episode comes together so well because you have this sense of these two different characters being hunted by Darksiders, and it's really cleverly done.
Yeah, I think this is what really gave me a sense of like adrenaline throughout the episode, was the way it cut. And in the first hour, I was like, hang on a sec, like it's going to be a bit disjointed. But then what they actually gave us was, I really did feel the tension and the dread of the situation. Kenobi's dealing with this and being hunted. Then, on Tatooine, the hunt's on as well. And, ultimately that, both parties need to come together at some point, but they're very far away from each other, or it feels that way in this moment. And who's to say these actually happened at the same time? Like, maybe Kenobi's stuff happened slightly before for him to be able to get a Tatooine on time. But the way they tell the story, interweave them, was just perfect storytelling to really give that sense of dread of, he has Kenobi being hunted, and that's very real. And then here we see Reva hunting on the hunt here in Tatooine, and you know that Kenobi needs to get there, but Kenobi's nowhere near getting there right now because he's in the middle of his own thing, and it's yeah. I think the way they edit it and the way they put it together, and the moving from Kenobi to Reva, I think beforehand thinking that won't work, but actually it worked perfectly in this storytelling.
On Tatooine, Uncle Owen has brought Luke to a parts store in Anchorhead. They need a new piece for the speeder because it seems that Luke has been perhaps traveling a little faster than he should have been. And Owen's having to be the uncle paying out to fix the speeder. I loved how he was sort of, you get the sense Luke's done this more than once. You could sort of see that tired edge to Uncle Owen in this moment. And then the water trader who Reva was questioning earlier then comes to warn Owen that somebody is looking for him and his family. And Owen's plan is to quickly rush back to the Mos Eisley homestead to get Luke safely back to Beru. And it seems that they've always had a plan in place to protect Luke. What really sort of struck me about Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru is how much they care for Luke. We don't really get to see it in the original trilogy because in A New Hope, they're only on screen for minutes. But from this episode, you can really see, Owen and Beru will do anything to protect Luke.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I loved about this scene was, you have this beautiful moment of like, it's a family moment. They went to the parts shop because, his son, even though, it is his nephew, but his son, has broken something in the speeder. They need to repair it, so he took him to the shop to replace it. And it's that moment where Owen actually says, I'm not like jokes. I'm not as patient as you think, but he was always going to come and replace it because he loves him. and it's that moment where like nothing else matters in the world. It's just a farmer and his son going to the shop to buy something to fix the speeder. You can probably Luke might have broke it last week, and you can tell Uncle Owen would have been like, "Look, you've broke it. We're not fixing it till next Saturday because that's when I've got time to fix it. So you're going to be without it till then." Maybe like a little life lesson in there, probably. So a beautiful moment, and then the water vendor comes in and tells Owen, and then that moment of just being a family all of a sudden evaporates because now it's like, right, the family are in danger. We could all be killed here. I might have my son taken away from me here. So I really enjoyed that beautiful moment of like bliss and not a care in the world, and then it all being sort of shattered in this moment, and then straight away Owen's like, right, we need to get back to the farm, we need to get Baru, and we need to get a plan together.
Yeah, I also, when they went into the shop to get the supplies, for me, it brought me back to a Phantom Menace, and it was almost like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were walking into Watto's shop, and I was half expecting Watto to appear, but it was a proper, like you say, showing Owen as more of the caring uncle, which obviously a lot of what we've seen of Owen previously in A New Hope and also in this series has been the overprotective, gruff Uncle Owen. And this was Uncle Owen, the father figure, which obviously we didn't really get a sense of from any of the previous sort of, from the film. We didn't get time to see it. So I really liked this, and it gave Joel Egerton the time to actually shine as an actor as well, which was nice. And obviously, then, as you say, he's rushing off. He's got a plan, or he seems to have a plan. He's realised this day could come. And obviously, when he gets back to Baru, we get to see what's happening.
Yeah, because it turns out Baru is one auntie you don't mess with her secret weapon stash. I absolutely love this.
Sarah Connor.
I think, when we first introduced to Baru, we see her just cooking in the kitchen, being very domestic. Even in the prequels, she's bringing drinks for Padme and Anakin. And yet here she is getting out her massive blasters to take on what they know is a Force user. And, no qualms, no balking. She is willing, to sacrifice herself if she must for Luke. I think seeing this side of Baru, seeing this side of Uncle Owen, just added just another layer to this whole episode for me.
I think it shows how strong they are as a couple because Owen gets in. I don't think they have a concrete plan at first. I think Owen gets in. Owen's first thing, we go on the run, or you go and see someone and discuss, they talk it out. If we go and hide with someone, we put them in danger. And Baru's very much like, no, we'll handle it here. Whether it's foolish or it's not foolish, but no, like this is our home. We know better than anybody. We've got these blasters hidden. We knew this day could come. Like they know who Luke Skywalker is. They know who his father is. They know how important he is to the galaxy. And I think it's a couple who have each other's back. It's a loving couple, and a very scary time. And they probably are both very scared, but they're able to hold each other together here. And Baru's very much there for her husband, and I think Owen, when he first gets, I think he's wavering a little bit. Like he doesn't quite know what to do. But then when he sees Baru sort of step up, then he's very much like, right, yep, we're stepping up. And I love seeing that as a couple, like them sort of being there for each other and leaning on each other and taking strength from each other. And that's powerful to see. He has these two people don't have the Force, but they have each other. They have a strong belief, and they have a love for each other and a love for Luke. And that's going to get them through this. I think that's very much
the most powerful force of them all.
Definitely, that's the story of Star Wars. Star Wars is about loving people. That's what George Lucas says. It's about loving people, being there for people, making the right choice. And here we go. It's a choice that might. I mean, it's not, but it's a choice that could end up. In this moment, these people. There's a possibility these people could die, but they still make that decision because they love each other and it's the right thing to do. It's a hard choice as well, but they still make it to stand up for themselves against a much stronger foe.
So while Beru and Uncle Owen prepare to fight off Reva, Obi-Wan is preparing to fight Vader. He takes a lone ship from the path to leave Roken, and the others a chance to escape, and knows he can draw Vader's eye to him only. And he sets off for a rocky moon. It's unnamed at the moment. I did check, but this moon is particularly unnamed. And we then get a little bit of a power play between Vader and the Grand Inquisitor, who's fully healed and has got no stomach issues now. Vader obviously wants Kenobi, and the Grand Inquisitor does try to make Vader see that capturing the Path Rebels would actually be the greater opportunity. And you could really sense the animosity between these two in this moment. Honda, you're a big fan of the Grand Inquisitor. What did you make of this?
I'll be honest, the Grand Inquisitor for me in this entire series has been one big disappointment. And he still just feels like a camp caricature, which I'm really, really disappointed in. Obviously, the look, Rupert Friend is an actor. I'm not having a go at him. It is the whole way that they've gone with the look, with the way the character's been set out. I just don't like it. And again, yeah, it's just a real. The whole character's been underused. I understand why, because of the plot with Reva, which has played out brilliantly. But I almost feel that they could have just had the Grand Inquisitor almost as a cameo and then played it out with an argument between two of the other Inquisitors. But obviously, she wanted to be the Grand Inquisitor. But yeah, it's just. I know they tried to defend the whole look of the Grand Inquisitor and saying that it was down to logistics and movement, which made me think, great, we're going to see a proper duel, and nothing's come. I feel they've really wasted the character. But at the same time, I understand because of the story. But yeah, it was. He always does look at the grand scheme of things. We've seen this in Rebels. In the first season of Rebels, he was almost like the Thrawn character. But he did have this. He was after all these Jedi, and he was going to find a way to find them. But I think that's why, with the path, rather than going after one Jedi who's been put on this pedestal by Vader, he wants to go after the Jedi as a whole. So that did sort of fit, but I just, yeah, it was another thing. It was always they had to have someone there to try and convince Vader not to go after Obi-Wan. And let's face it, we knew he was going to go after Obi-Wan. And this was the chance it was going to happen. So he was never going to be talked down. But it was, yeah, it was just. I don't know. I just really not happy with the Grand Inquisitor.
So I took it as, I think the Grand Inquisitor knows what Vader's going to do. He just says it because, really, yeah, the bigger picture is we should go after the craft with everyone else on it. But I think he knows that Vader's going to go after Obi-Wan. So I think he just says he's peace, and he knows what Vader's going to do. And that it's almost a smirk he does after Vader says, follow Kenobi. And the officer says, yep, do it. It's almost like, yeah, like, I knew that was going to happen, but I've sent me peace anyway. And if anyone asks me what happened, like, I advise the correct way, but I think he's very aware of, like, he's not prepared to die on his sword over it. He just, politely, this is what I think. If he disagrees and he tells you it, like, of course you have, I knew this was going to happen. As for his involvement in the series, I think his involvement's been what's had to be for the story. He's not a major part of the story. Reva is the Inquisitor, the main Inquisitor who we've seen. And he's very much the leader of the Inquisitors. So I think, you probably had to include him, especially when Reva's plan was to become Grand Inquisitor. That's how she was going to get close to Vader, then hunt Vader. I sort of understand why we haven't seen the Grand Inquisitor being more involved, because that would be a different show. Do you know what I mean? And we've talked about how good Reva is and how good Moses Ingram is. And if we'd written it the other way with the Grand Inquisitors and everything, then Reva would be either not in it at all or would be in a tiny role. Do you know what I mean? So I think the way the cards are fallen, the way they wrote the story is what it is, and I think it works. As for the way he looks, it's different to the animation. It's different to Revenge of the Sith. But I think overall, I understand who he is. I know who he is. And I can take it at that.
Definitely. And if fans do want to see more of the Grand Inquisitor, then if they haven't watched Rebels, then they need to go watch Rebels. And he does feature quite prominently within the Darth Vader comics. And Vader gets back to him for all the sass he got about chasing down Path Rebels instead of Kenobi. And Vader does take a shuttle, which he flies himself. He states that he will face Kenobi alone. This is, it's a battle of the Titans between these two. So he takes an Imperial shuttle down to this moon to face Kenobi. Now, I predicted that Obi-Wan was going to ditch his outer cape, Revenge of the Sith style. He doesn't. But we do get this lovely little scene whilst he's still in his ship waiting for Vader, where he does take off the cape, and in the pocket is Lola, which Leia has hidden. And I thought it was like sort of a token for a knight going into battle. It felt very medieval to me.
Yeah, and I think, the conversation he had with Leia on board the ship before he left, Leia was saying, Lola brings happiness to the people, makes them not scared. And he says, he makes a comment of saying, maybe I could borrow her because I need her too, because he was scared. And so Leia's actually put Lola in his pocket in order to make him not scared. So again, like the ultimate, she's gave Obi-Wan Lola to try and help him. Again, showing the brilliant side of Leia in this moment, the touching side of Leia in this moment, and the connection that she has with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So yeah, I thought it was a really beautiful moment, and you can tell when he pulls it out, and you can tell he's almost like, wow, like the power of this child is, and the love this child feels is second to none. You can almost see him reminiscent of, almost have to say, of course she's brilliant because she's the child of Padme, one of my best friends, and the child of Anakin, and Anakin before he turned, was his best friend, and these two awesome people have had this awesome child, and even in this moment of absolute dire near death, the ship might get blown up. Like, in that moment, she puts this in Obi-Wan's pocket, knowing that it'll bring him a bit of joy. So yeah, I think just a beautiful, wonderful moment.
Yeah, I have to admit, the relationship that they've built with Obi-Wan and Leia, I think, has been beautiful throughout this series. And this little act of kindness again just shows how, from the rather suspicious young girl, she's now gone to someone who's put all her trust in this guy, and he has become like an uncle to her.
And then the two former brothers and Jedi are face to face again, with Obi-Wan facing Darth Vader. And there's a lot of callbacks to Revenge of the Sith throughout the next set of scenes. But we start off with Vader asking if Obi-Wan's come to kill him. And Obi-Wan says, I will do what I must. Just as he says to Anakin before their duel in Revenge of the Sith. and we get the move, the Kenobi move, the form-free lightsaber hold. I was yelling at the screen at this point.
Yeah, we've all been waiting for it, and Ewan McGregor pulled it off brilliantly. This is I will give them this. They gave us the battle that Kathleen Kennedy promised, and as this plays out, I don't think anyone can be disappointed. And Ewan McGregor, I think, he certainly put his all into the fight, and also, I don't know how much of it was Hayden Christensen in the armor, but Vader certainly put in a few good shots himself.
Yeah, I thought that the beginning of the battle, when I think Vader says, "Have you come to destroy me?" It's sort of similar to Revenge of the Sith, but they have a bit more of a conversation in Revenge of the Sith, where here Kenobi's very much straight away. I will do what I must. So he sort of jumps. He's not gonna stand here and try and turn Anakin back or talk to him. It's very much like, I'll do what I must. Like, we're not getting into this. You're not going to tease us. You're not going to make us feel bad about you. No, I'm here and we're going to end it. Which I thought was very powerful. And obviously, very subtle callback to the Clone Wars and to the prequels, with the form free stance. Lightsaber goes up. Just a magical moment in Star Wars.
The following duel is both epic and also heart-wrenching. And I agree that Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen both did an incredible job. And obviously they're stuntmen as well. I think they were at least 2 Darth Vader stuntmen. So absolute kudos to all of them for this. It did feel very much like a prequels duel. You had the spinning of the lightsabers. You had a lot of Obi-Wan's technique from the prequel trilogy throughout. He's got a much more sort of elegance, whereas Vader now is just sort of quite sort of clunky and brutal in his movements. And you can also see, I've watched this duel quite a few times. Vader does fight a little bit dirty. He grabs Obi-Wan at one point, like from behind, to throw him. He punches him in the nose. There's quite some dirty moves in there.
Yeah, I think the dirtiest one for me was when the fighting and Vader uses the Force to move a rock to take out Obi-Wan's legs. That was the dirtiest move in the game. I was like, bloody hell! I'd gasp when that happened. When Vader used the rock to trip Obi-Wan up, that looked and felt. You could feel the brutality through the screen. This whole duel was sort of Vader trying to use his brute power of the Force and his brute actual strength anyway, sort of overcome Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan eventually, sort of using his finesse and his calm, cool collectedness to actually overcome it. Then I love it when Vader uses sort of deep down pulls on the Force to create the earthquake. Was again sort of a huge use of Force power. Again, just showing you just how powerful Anakin / Vader is with the Force.
Also, in that moment, he is literally making himself the high ground.
Yeah. I think
Because
there's
he's
been a lot of
burying
comments.
Obi-Wan alive and sinking him, and he now has the high ground.
And it did at this point, even though we know Obi-Wan survives, it is, you think, crikey, this really is getting dirty, and you think, how's Obi-Wan going to get out of this? And of course, obviously, we've never seen Obi-Wan really use the Force to the extent that we see in this episode, which is, I think, is what made this episode quite special.
It's an incredible moment.
Yeah, I think, Obi-Wan, we've always known he's had this in him, but we've never seen it. But, being the, in by Revenge of the Sith, he's the 3rd highest member of the Jedi Council. It's like Yoda, Mace Windu, and him. He sort of put Kylie Mundi in that to the side almost, and he's risen through the ranks very quickly. So we know he's had this in him, but we've never actually seen it. But I think, I love, obviously, Vader essentially buries him alive. Vader creates the earthquake, Obi-Wan falls into it, Vader then starts throwing the rocks in there. He sort of buries him alive, which is a very brutal when you think about the worst ways to die, you'll probably see being burned alive and being buried alive. Okay, and I think in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan, didn't do it on purpose, but he essentially left Anakin to burn alive, to die. One of the most brutal ways you can die. So I think here Vader's he's already tried to burn him alive earlier on in the series, and here he's trying to bury him alive. So he buries him with these rocks, and he walks away. Vader walks away after he's buried him, thinking, I've buried you to die there. A slow, painful death, knowing that I've destroyed you. And now I'm going to go back and destroy everyone you love on that ship. And I love how we see Obi-Wan he's just holding the rocks back, and you can see, like, the darkness is creeping in. You can hear Anakin, you can hear Vader, the voiceovers from the past and from now. And it's like darkness, and it's going to consume him, and it's going to make him get crushed by the rocks. But then his thoughts turn to Luke, to Leia, to the light, and then that gives him his power. The light side, a Jedi's strength, and he's able to push all the rocks back and climb out. In an absolute euphoric fashion. I just love the way they transcended from the darkness, Obi-Wan nearly failing, to then feeling the light. It was done fantastically well, and I loved it.
And just before Obi-Wan manages that, Vader's sort of looking at this pile of rocks that he has buried Obi-Wan in, and he says, and the way he says it, to me, this is one of the sort of few times that Vader has sounded sad. He sort of looks at the rocks and just says, did you really think you could kill me? And it's sort of the way he says it. Oh, it gave me chills, because there was a haunting quality to the way Vader was saying it. But of course, Obi-Wan is not going to be down for long. And using the light side of the Force, he makes his high ground. There's a lot of high ground going on here, lifting rocks to make the high ground. This scene, I mean, it looks just like what Rey does at the end of The Last Jedi, but I don't know, for me it was much more powerful, Obi-Wan doing it. There was just the way he rose and the way he made the rocks rise. It was just incredible. And then we get the next part of the duel, which is Obi-Wan just hurtling every rock back at Vader. And this is sort of where the duel starts to get really brutal.
Yeah, we almost see a different Kenobi when Kenobi ascends out of the pit, and then he starts, fighting Vader. We sort of see, Vader's almost in shock at Kenobi's there, I think, and he gets a bit decentered, shall we say, almost like falls out of his centeredness. And Obi-Wan's able to, sort of attack his box. He's breathing, his control box on his chest. He's able to attack that. He's able to slice Vader across the back. And then there's one point where he almost sort of looks like he's ascending himself to heaven, where Obi-Wan, his lightsabers in one hand, and he's hardly got it gripped, and he's just arms are out like Jesus Christ would be, and then he's just throwing rocks at Vader, and Vader can't withstand them, and you can sense the rocks are like crushing Vader's suit, and the suit very much keeps him alive, and it's doing a lot of damage to him. And it was like very brutal, but also very mystical, I thought. And sort of sets it up for the next part of the battle.
As they continue dueling, Vader does get back up from all the rock hurtling somehow with brutal strength. And he continues battling with Obi-Wan, but Vader now, he's worn down. And Obi-Wan, I think, is revitalized by accessing the Force in the way he just did. And he does... he jumps on a rock. He actually tries to do what Anakin tried to do to him on Mustafar. He jumps up and then slashes down, taking half of Vader's mask with him.
Yeah, I really want to talk about this because there's a moment at the beginning of the battle, as I think we spoke about, when Kenobi just says, I will do what I must, and goes into the Form 3 stance, the Kenobi stance is called. And I think Vader says, "Then you will die," which is what he says to Ahsoka when they meet in Twilight of the Apprentice, the season finale of Rebel Season 2, in that powerful moment where, Ahsoka says, "If I can't save Anakin, I'll avenge his death." And he goes, "You will die. Then you will die," is what he says. So it's exactly the same here. And then here, Obi-Wan's able to cut Vader's mask. He cuts the right side of the mask, where Ahsoka cuts the left-hand side of the mask. And we have two very similar moments where we get Anakin creeping through the mask to Ahsoka, and you think, oh, they're gonna have a moment, he might turn back, but then I think he tells her, "You will die," and then in this moment, it's the right hand side, the opposite side of the mask, and we have him tell Kenobi, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did," as in, I decided to become Darth Vader. That's a choice I made myself. So it's very much the same thing happening to two people who loved him and two people he loved. I love the fact that it's different. It's the same message, but it's different sides of the mask. So so we see Ahsoka sees his left eye and his left hand side of the face and gets that horrible message. Obi-Wan sees the right hand side of his face and gets a horrible message. But then in Return of the Jedi, Luke sees him with his own eyes and he's redeemed. So it's sort of like that sort of. I love I don't know what the word would be. Not mythology, but I love just how that felt. Seeing that and it just. Both sides of the face see his best friends and he's nasty, but then at the end he's like, "Let me see with my own eyes," takes the full mask off, and he's looking at his son with his own eyes, both eyes, and he's glad that he hasn't killed his son, and he's glad that his son's redeemed him. I thought it was very, very, very powerful stuff.
It is such powerful
Yeah,
juxtaposition
for me,
that we have Ahsoka managing one side, Obi-Wan taking down another, but only Luke can fully unmask Vader, Anakin at that point. And what particularly impressed me with this scene as well was the way the lightsabers are lighting their faces, because when Anakin sort of first starts speaking to Obi-Wan, both of their lightsabers are reflecting onto each other, and he hasn't got his Sith eyes when he first speaks to Obi-Wan, but then when he continues, to break Obi-Wan's heart and says, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did," his Sith eyes come back, and all you can see on Vader's mask is the red from his lightsaber, and all you can see on Obi-Wan is the blue from his lightsaber, and you can see there and then they are like forever divided. That's sort of Obi-Wan's last chance to help Anakin, and then from there out they're like fully divided. I think this is the moment where Obi-Wan truly gives up on Anakin. Oh no, you wanted to say something.
yeah, similar sort of thing. The whole sequence here, because obviously, as we said, like, I'm a huge Rebels fan, so the similarities with the slicing of the helmet from both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, who undisputably are the two people that weren't Padme that Anakin obviously had the strongest relationship with. And obviously it took the child of Padme to redeem Anakin in the Empire Strikes Back, not the Return of the Jedi, sorry. But the whole thing with this sequence again, I loved. Like we said, you can see Anakin's face, and it was as he spoke. You obviously had Hayden Christensen's voice, and then at one point it slipped back into James Earl Jones, and then again back to Hayden Christensen, and it was almost like there was still a battle going on, but in the long run, Vader won through, which is where you get this announcement that obviously Anakin's gone and is no more. Um, for me, it was beautifully played, and it really did. It also the way it ended with Obi-Wan walking away, and calling him Darth, which then ties in obviously to why he would say that in A New Hope, although it still doesn't really explain because Darth is a title that's given to the Sith. But obviously, it seems that's Obi-Wan's way of addressing the new Lord, you know, the new form of Anakin. that he's
Well,
got
I
to
think
deal
that's
with.
because I think that's because in this moment, sort of, he's told Obi-Wan that like that like he decided to become Darth. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah,
he decided to become Darth,
yeah,
and in that moment, Anakin died. So I think that's Obi-Wan saying, right, no, you're fine. You're no longer Anakin. You are goodbye, Darth. If you're saying you are now Darth and you chose to be Darth, then goodbye, Darth. I think it's very much a sort of a, not an insult, but almost an insult. Like, if that's what you're saying, then okay, Darth. Like, yeah, if you're that stubborn, okay, Darth.
yeah. No, but it perfectly lined it up for obviously when we next. Well, we assume we're next going to see them meet in obviously A New Hope. Um, but yeah, for me, this scene really was something special, and it was. I will give them their due. They delivered on what they promised on that side of things with the duel, which was good.
One of the
I
things I
also
love as
think
well
that.
was that
No, you go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Pete.
Kat. So we're talking about like costumes, the way things look, sound effects, music cues. I think when the suit gets damaged, we hear like the breathing of the suit is very similar to Return of the Jedi when Luke injures Vader. So I love that. That straight away we know that sound from when Vader was injured in Return of the Jedi, and it starts playing here after Obi-Wan starts berating him with the rocks and sort of hitting the control panel on his chest. We hear that, so we know he's in danger. So again, a subtle reference that we know what it means, and it's played here. Another thing when Anakin / Vader's talking to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan says he's sorry, and Anakin / Vader sort of says, "Don't be sorry. I'm not your failure. Like, I killed Anakin." And I think I think at that point, I think Jason's right. The voices, sometimes it's Hayden, sometimes James Earl Jones, sometimes it's both. But I think when he delivers that line, it's more Hayden's voice, and the smirk. It's hard to see, but there's a smirk on Anakin's face when he delivers it, as he knows that's going to cut Obi-Wan right to the heart, right to the soul, and that's when Obi-Wan knows or not knows, but that's when Obi-Wan decides you're not the chosen one. You are fully turned. You are Darth. And actually, Luke's now the chosen one. You're not the chosen one. I fully believe that Luke's the chosen one now. I think that in that moment is when he breaks his heart, and that's when Obi-Wan, when Obi-Wan says goodbye, Darth. I think that's when Obi-Wan saying, "I'm done with you." And it's because the way Anakin / Vader delivers that line, because it's very cutting and it's on purpose, and it's a sort of a evil, powerful, tragic moment.
I also think, when Obi-Wan just says, goodbye, Darth, he's also just labeling then, he's sort of stripping Anakin of his identity completely, and he's just labeling him as yet another Sith Lord, as yet another Force user that's turned to the dark side. To Obi-Wan's eyes now, Anakin truly is gone, and I think, he may not even believe in like the character of like sort of Vader. He's just like, Sith are Sith, you know. They're all Darksiders, and they all crave power. So he, by just labeling them as Darth, they're all the same. And I
Yeah,
think
and
that
also
could.
you got to think that how many Sith Lords Anakin has Obi-Wan seen? This is the third apprentice of Palpatine, so they are expendable. Palpatine's happy to lose his apprentices because you get another one down the line. So I think he's very much like, yeah, like, you are a nothing. You don't think for yourself. You follow his lead. You're stuck. Yeah, you are just another Darth because I've already defeated. We've already got rid of Dooku and Tyrannus and Maul, and you're just another one of them. You just replace them, and then down the line, someone's going to replace you.
So in the end, Sith Lords really were Obi-Wan's speciality.
Indeed, indeed.
Also, during the fight, I don't know if you've probably both noticed, but when Obi-Wan does cut off half of Vader's mask, that's how Vader gets the scar across his head that we see at the end of Return of the Jedi when Luke takes off the mask.
Yeah, again, that was just perfect sort of symmetry between this and what's to come. So I love when they do things like this. It just adds a bit more meaning behind things in a really simple way. That's why Star Wars is so good. That's why Star Wars feels so real and visceral. There's things like this. So yeah, it's all Anakin's other and Vader's other scars are from Obi-Wan pretty much, and then you know he has a fresh one. He thought he couldn't get any more damage, but he has a fresh one.
Speaking of visceral, actually, Obi-Wan just walks away because Vader's too injured to carry on the battle. And then the way he shouts Obi-Wan's name, that just gave me full-on chills because it's Anakin's modulated voice and it sounds so discordant and metallic, and you can hear the rage and the pain in his voice. And oh, that cut through me.
Yeah, I thought that was very tragic and powerful. I think part of Obi-Wan walking away is that he's just told him, right, you know what, actually Anakin, like, I chose to kill Anakin. So like in that moment, Obi-Wan's like, well, if you're not Anakin, then I don't know who you are. So you know what it is, I've defeated you. I'm going to walk away because if you're not, if you're saying you killed Anakin, then I've got no connection to you. So I've defeated you. Goodbye, and walks away. Because he must know that Vader's probably not going to die here, I'd imagine. But it's just a sort of a moment where he's like, I'm done with this. You've caused enough trauma in my heart and soul and mind. And guess what? No more. I'm free of you. I'm going to walk away now.
And it's just as Obi-Wan said to his Padawan that mercy is the best form of defeat. He walks away mercifully from Vader. He doesn't kill him, because he is a Jedi, and Jedi do not do that. They will not cut down somebody who cannot fight back in that moment, which Vader cannot do. And it is an exceptionally powerful scene, very emotive as Obi-Wan walks away.
And it reminded me of Return of the Jedi. So Obi-Wan, he's defeated him and he walks away, and then the same thing happens when Luke defeats Vader in Return of the Jedi, and then Luke turns the lightsaber off and walks away. And I think it's almost a teaching that Obi-Wan maybe gives Luke, and maybe in that moment when Vader sees Luke do that, and Obi-Wan did it as well, maybe that's a huge part in why Vader turns back, because it's like, actually, mercy, yeah, I've done so much bad, but these two people have still given me mercy when I don't deserve it. And then in the end, Luke shows him the mercy, and then he finally understands it in that moment, I think, and that's what brings him back, or part of what brings him back. So it's sort of a beautiful, beautiful moment down the line.
Meanwhile, while all of this is occurring, Beru and Owen are having to fight off Reva. Reva has arrived at the Lars homestead, and she walks in, ignites her lightsaber, while Owen and Beru are hiding ready in sniper positions. Them taking on Reva, a very competent Force user. They've just got blasters. The odds felt so stacked against them in this moment. I was, even though knowing Luke has to be okay, I was still worried for Beru and Owen.
I just wondered if they booby trapped the place and something was going to happen to Reva. But it was, this for me was it was great to see them sort of fighting as much as they could to get Luke to safety. And then obviously we see Luke run off into the darkness eventually. And you suddenly see this frightened kid off on his own. And then obviously, as I say, I still just had the problem that I knew he was going to survive. But then at the same time, I did wonder, well, what does this mean for Reva's character? It was obviously that Obi-Wan was going to get back. We watched him go to hyperdrive and, head off into space. He clearly was on his way. But obviously, yeah, it was a little bit of what is going to happen here, obviously, whilst he's out in the darkness. I did wonder if maybe he might have found some force strength, but that didn't happen.
I'm
Yeah,
glad actually that Luke wasn't using the Force at all to, outpace Reva, because a huge part of A New Hope is the start of Luke's um, hero's journey into training to be a Jedi. And I think, we've seen it now with Rey of somebody just discovering their latent force power, whereas, both Luke and Anakin did need to be trained to fully understand their force powers. So I think from a continuity perspective, the way that they just had, Luke running for his life, because Reva is injured, she can't go as fast as Luke anyway. It did work better from a story standpoint. I appreciate also how hard the story writers worked to make sure that at no point does Luke see Reva's lightsaber, so that his sort of awe when Obi-Wan gives him the lightsaber in New Hope still remains intact.
I wouldn't have minded if Luke had used the Force here, almost like in X-Men, how mutants get their powers usually when they're in heightened stress moments. So, if he'd used it by accident because he was full of stress, subconsciously, I wouldn't have minded that. But I think, as we've discussed, Reva is very much the third lead. Moses Ingram's the third lead in this series. And it's actually Reva's choice is to not kill Luke. Once she sees what she's, Luke ends up falling and gets hurt, and she sees that, and she decides, actually, I can't kill a child. I can't kill this child.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
this
have to
is
take him. I'm gonna have to take him back to his family, and it's her choice. It's her decision. So Obi-Wan doesn't make it in time. So if she decides to kill Luke, yeah, she kills him because Obi-Wan's not there in time, and um, Owen and Beru aren't there in time. So she could kill him here, but she can't do it, and I think that's a big part of her character. And so I think she makes this, she can't, and takes him back. I think that's a huge, powerful moment of, again, redemption. It mirrors Anakin's redemption almost, what that we're going to see in the original trilogy. This sort of, yeah, you can decide. You've done a lot of bad this series, but in this moment, you haven't killed this child. You've went to, and you can't do it. Which is a good thing. I think also as well we see a difference when she's actually at the homestead. She's hunting Luke and at desires on Luke, that she doesn't actually kill Owen or Beru. She hurts them, but she doesn't kill them where she could have done. Where earlier on we saw how quickly she chopped someone's hand off in the street. Do you know what I mean? So we're starting to see a change back to being sort of not good, but not this Inquisitor. And then obviously right here, this moment here, she doesn't kill Luke because she can't do it. She decides not to do it, and is able to sort of step back, almost redeem herself in this moment, and take the child back, which I think is a powerful, powerful moment. And again, tells us, that lesson in Star Wars where, we all make mistakes and sometimes we make bad decisions, but your next decision can be different. You can make a better choice. And she does that here.
Yeah, for me, this part of Reva's redemption, they could have gone two ways with this story. They could have had Obi-Wan come back, defeat Reva, but in fact, she's gone through a journey and we saw it from the opening scene of the episode, because I think we can all agree that she was the youngling that we start off with. So we've been on the journey with Reva here, and we've seen her. Obviously, she saw the devastation that was caused by Order 66. She has this hatred for Darth Vader, and she's determined to destroy him. Obviously, he's then turned it on her, and she's found out about these children, and her only way of really harming Darth Vader is by harming the children. So this is, she's on this journey now of pure hatred. But then at the moment, and we see the flashback to the Order 66, and we see Anakin's eyes, or Darth Vader's by this time eyes, and then we suddenly realise that she's come to the realization that if she kills this child, she has done exactly the same as him. And she even reiterates that when she's brought him back, and obviously Obi-Wan's arrived, and Obi-Wan clearly says, no, you've made your choice. And then this so instead of having to have the battle with Obi-Wan, we've got the redemption of Reva, um, which in itself lines itself up. Assuming obviously she just survives all her injuries. We could see another story of what happens to Reva after the events of this series, and there's a lot of possibilities there.
This emotional battle she has with herself as she considers killing Luke, it's so emotive. And Moses' Ingram performance here, this sort of whole sequence from her trying to decide what she's going to become to the conversation she has with Obi-Wan, her performance was absolutely incredible. I was riveted the entire time. It has been revealed that in the original script, Reva was going to die, but honestly, I am so fed up of redemption through death in Star Wars, as anybody who follows my Twitter quite well knows. And I think to have Reva decide to redeem herself through her actions is such a much more powerful message to send in the story. And I am very glad that they didn't decide to finish it with her dying, because it is more powerful for her to live. She has to live with the consequences of actions, knowing what she has done, and forging a new path and a new life for herself, where she can try to either forget that or try and make up for it, which is the harder thing to do. It is the harder thing to live after redeeming yourself, because you have to live with all the memories of what you did. So I think the writing of this scene was amazing, and the parallel of when she's carrying Luke to the last homestead, that was a perfect parallel to Anakin carrying Shmi's body, because in that moment, okay, we know Luke is okay, but it does look to like Owen and Beru that he could be dead. And this whole sequence was just absolute perfection. I think I would gladly see Reva either in live action again, or I think you could set a very good novel after the events of Kenobi, like where she's trying to figure out who she is.
Well, she can pop up anywhere now. That's what's fantastic about it. Does she meet later on? Does she meet with Rogan and be part of that path group? Does she become part of a rebel cell? Who knows? I think we're probably going to see a series or a book or a comic somewhere where something's happening and she'll pop up and it'll make sense now. Because she's essentially been redeemed. I love the fact Kenobi speaks to her, and Kenobi does a bit of teaching here. He is a Jedi Master. When he tells her, actually now, you've made the right choice, not out of, you haven't done it because you failed. Because I think when she comes back, she's like, I failed. I couldn't kill him for my friends who died. And he goes, no, your friends will be proud. You freed them because you showed mercy. Again, that teaching of mercy. And she's like, what to do now? And he's almost like, me and you are free. We can go and do anything we want. She goes her way, and I think that teaching of mercy and that teaching of you're free now, so you can go and do whatever you like. We are going to see her do some good things in the galaxy, hopefully. So I think we will see her, maybe not a Reva series, like what I mean. But I think we will see the character in Star Wars canon in the next 5 years pop up, and we'll see what she's doing next. I think that's great. And I agree, this person's made mistakes, but they don't need to die for those mistakes, and made the right choice at the end there, and then can now go on with their lives and hopefully do some good.
With the dust settling from the battle and Reva having left, Obi-Wan goes back to his cave to pack up his things. I think he's come to the realization now that Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, they can keep Luke safe well on their own. They don't really need him. So that's why he's going to live past the Dune Sea in A New Hope.
But it's also, I thought, not just is he going to leave Luke to them? But also, I think, because he's still there keeping an eye, do you know what I mean? But I think if you notice, he puts his lightsaber on, puts his robes on, his belt back on. It's almost like, I'm not going to hide anymore. Like, I am a Jedi. Like, yeah, I might not tell people I'm a Jedi, but I'm not gonna hide away in this cave and wear different clothes. I am Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, and I'm gonna hide my name, and I'm not gonna say I'm a Jedi because obviously I didn't want them all rocking up. But actually, my identity is my identity, and I'm not gonna hide that anymore. I'm gonna be my true self here. So I really thought it was powerful. You know, the way he packs up, the way he gets on his Obi and he rides off. You know, his lightsaber's on his hilt. He looks like a Jedi. He's got his robes on. He's got his, you know, he is a Jedi, and he's not hiding that anymore. Yeah, he's not flaunting. He's not going around going, "Hello, I'm a Jedi." But you know, he's himself. He's centered in this moment, and he knows his purpose, which I thought was wonderful. You know, from the whole series, you know, it's been about him getting from completely hiding and wallowing away in self pity to being, you know, owning the past, looking to the future, and being who he is. And we've got there now at the end, which I was really, really happy with.
Actually, I've got a brilliant quote there to bring in from that. As at the Blue Milk Mama said on Twitter, she summed up, I think, this Obi-Wan's journey perfectly. She said, Kenobi is the story of a man who has lost his faith and has found it again through others.
Definitely, and I think he's found it again not just through others, but also through his love for others and others' love for him, and you know what he's willing to do to help others and what the others are willing to do to help him. Again, just love and just being there for each other. I think, you know, is what brings him back and is able for him to be his best self. Where, you know, at the beginning he wasn't feeling any love from anywhere. He didn't love himself. No one loved him. He was alone. You know, you could almost say he was going through depression. You know, he had no one to turn to. His only person he could speak to was a Jawa, Tika. Do you know what I mean? That was the only person he had sort of nice interactions with, and even then it was sort of through necessity, not through wanting to. Like, you had to get these parts from Tika. And Tika had to sell parts to him, so, you know, it wasn't very much a given relationship. Do you know what I mean? It was through necessity. And then here we see, you know, rocks up the owns. You know, the Law's homestead. He very much tells Owen, "Look, I'm shooting off. You guys are enough for the boy. The future will take care of itself. You know, I'm not here to force teachings down. The boy needs to grow and just be with you guys." And then I thought it was wonderful that when Owen says, "You know, do you want to meet him?" Again, sort of just beautiful moment at the end here.
Yeah, and we get the classic line.
Hello there.
It had to happen, and it was perfectly placed. You know, that for me, that whole scene is beautiful, and the way, you know, the whole way that we're seeing Obi-Wan with Luke, with Leia, all the families. You know, that this is a guy that when we first met him at the beginning of the series, obviously he was very much down. He'd suffered through everything we'd seen in the prequels. Um, so obviously then to get him to the character that we meet in A New Hope, this series did, you know, bring that through. And yeah, it was seeing him with actually meeting Luke. Obviously, everyone's a bit, oh, but then Luke can vaguely remember Ben Kenobi, which we see in A New Hope. So I sort of didn't have a problem with the fact that they actually got to properly meet here. And you know, it's nice that it also shows, although it does cause a little bit of an issue because obviously Owen seems to have forgiven Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whereas obviously when we meet him in A New Hope, maybe there's another adventure to come that maybe Owen can't forgive him for.
Well, as a side note there, I can sort of tell you why I think that is. The comic series, the Star Wars comic series, there is a set of the Journals of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's basically set sort of right after the events of this series, because the costume that Obi-Wan wears at the end on Tatooine is on the cover of Star Wars number 13. Oh, sorry, number 15. It's the exact same costume. And we've got Black Cursor Town coming after Owen.
That's right.
We've got the water raiders. There's plenty of stuff for Obi-Wan and Owen to bicker about again and sort of become a bit more on edge again.
And I don't think in this moment, I don't think Owen's saying like, "You're my best mate, Obi-Wan. Thanks for dropping by." He's very much like, "Look, I appreciate that you were looking out for the boy as well as I was. We both disagree about how to go about that. I appreciate you coming and paying respects. So you know what? I'm going to let you meet the boy. It's not like you're going to be your best friend or that we're going to be friends going forward. It's just a respect thing. Like, you know what? I'm going to let you meet the boy because you obviously care about him and I care about him. I disagree with how we care about him, but you can meet the boy, you know, before you go off wherever you're going. And obviously, yeah. So that's why I took that as Owen just, you know, just giving Obi-Wan something that, and just a nice gesture, you know, not necessarily saying I'm your mate, but just and come round for blue milks whenever you want. But it was more of a nice gesture to someone who's obviously been through a lot. You know, a nice moment. And
Totally
also
agree
maybe I'm
with
thinking,
that.
you know, if I introduce him to Ben now, you know, if something was happening in Baru, which, you know, it probably would be Ben who would come and get him. So, you know, at least there's a connection there a little bit. So maybe he's thinking about that in the future as well, because, you know, they did come close to death in this series, and they'll definitely know that. They'll know how close they came to A, losing Luke, and B, losing themselves. So, you know, I think it's just a nice gesture that, you know, we sort of, you know, disagree how we go about things, but we're going about things for the right reasons. So, you know, you can meet him before you go away, and, you know, he's able to give him that toy, the Skyhopper, which is fantastic. Obviously, we see that in New Hope when he's playing with it. But yeah, so I love this scene. It just took the edge off Owen a bit, but, you know, showing that Owen, you know, he is a loving guy because he loves Luke so much. Do you know what I mean? He loves Bruce so much. So it's not that he's a nasty man. He's a loving man, but, you know, he disagrees with Obi-Wan about a lot of things. But, you know, guess what? We both care about the boy, so come and meet him before you go on your journey, wherever it is you're going.
So let's talk about Obi-Wan's farewell to Leia, because he does travel back to Alderaan to say goodbye to the princess in a surprise visit. And their reunion is so beautiful, so warming, so touching. She's now decked out much more like she will be in the future, in her sort of white gown, but with practical combat boots, and she's wearing Tala's holster that Obi-Wan gifted to her before leaving to fight Vader. And he comes back because he can't split Lola from Leia, and everything about this scene was so beautiful. The way Obi-Wan, you know, he goes straight over to Bail because they know each other so well, and his interaction with Leia both made me cry and made me laugh at the same time.
Yeah, and I think going back to what I said before, you know, I think, you know, when Kenobi was talking to Bale through the comlink at the beginning, you know, he's very much like, "Don't come here, I can't help." And then when Bale turned up, he's like, "You shouldn't be here." But then here, you know, as I said, you know, I think Obi-Wan's found himself again. That's why he's dressing the way he is. That's why, you know, he's left his hut. So here, you know, he sees Bale and he's found himself. He knows who Bale is. You know, it's high, like, you know what I mean? So I think that's, again, him showing that off. And we've both been through hard times and seen tragedy, but I'm me or you, we're both fighting for the galaxy. And to me, what it sets up is, I think, the fact that Kenobi arrives in this same ship. Kenobi obviously has this ship now, and now he's not tied to Tatooine forever. Yes, he'll come back and keep an eye on Luke, but should things pop up that he needs the help with, he's able to get about. So, you know, I think we're going to see a Kenobi that could be mobile throughout the galaxy if needed.
And then he goes to see to see Leia, to give her back Lola. And Leia actually takes Lola and puts her in the holster because she's not allowed a blaster as a 10-year-old, but she repurposes it for carrying Lola. And we get the sweeping Leia's theme. Natalie Holt brings that in, and the music just adds to the meaningfulness of this moment because Obi-Wan kneels down in front of Leia and starts saying that she has traits from both Padme and Anakin, but he can't tell her anything particularly much about them because he has to protect her identity. But he can tell her that, and that they were extraordinary people and she is their extraordinary daughter. And it was so touching. What I also found very moving about this scene was Leia's acceptance of, okay, I can't know much about my birth parents, but the way she looks then over at Breca and Bale, to her, that is her parents. You know, Leia is so accepting of her adopted parents. She doesn't feel the need to know about her biological parents. And I thought that was such an emotive part of this moment between her and Obi-Wan.
Definitely. And I think what I got from it as well was that Bale has, to a certain extent, I think Bale and Brea have to have the same attributes as what we just described. So I think when she looks back, she's like, yes, I've lost those parents who have those attributes, but actually these ones here love me. And actually these guys are similar. And these are my parents. And, you know, so I got that feeling of sort of that sort of bond that they're having. You know, you've described my birth parents, but also actually you've also described my adopted parents at the same time.
Yeah, the whole this whole series really has explored the relationship of Princess Leia and Belle and Brecca Morgana, and I love it. The way Jimmy Smits is a great actor, and I always felt he was underused in the prequels. So to see him come back in this and really get a chance to shine, and it's the perfect explanation of how Leia has ended up as the character that we see in A New Hope. And it's brilliant. I also, Kat, you just mentioned something about the music. I forgot to mention about the duel sequence with Obi-Wan and Darth. Did anyone else really get Duel of the Fates vibes with the music that was used there? Because I definitely felt that in the battle that they had.
Yeah, I felt it sort of mirrored tones of Duel of the Fates and Battle of the Heroes. I sort of, there was
Yeah,
definitely those vibes in there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Natalie Holt has done the music so much justice. She's woven little bits of John Williams's original themes into this, but she gets Star Wars. You can tell that just by the music because it's familiar yet new, and she keeps it so cinematic even for a television series. And I think she is a fabulous composer, and I want to see her doing the scores on more Star Wars projects.
definitely. Yeah, and I think that is they obviously picked the perfect person. Um, the way that she's woven those John Williams, and obviously we know he wrote the Obi-Wan theme for this series, and it went together perfectly. And yeah, hats off to her for pulling it off in in a familiar and yet new way.
And then back on Tatooine, as Obi-Wan is heading off for the Dune Sea, we get a cameo.
Yeah,
I think we were all expecting this at some point, but it's been teased and it's, well,
it
I
hasn't
mean,
been.
Obi-Wan,
I
It
am on
hasn't
record saying
been
it will
teased.
happen.
It was gonna happen, but it hasn't really been teased. It's the one thing that no one sort of mentioned, but we all knew the story that Obi-Wan left with at the end of Revenge of the Sith. This scene had to happen, and it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I can't wait to see more of Liam Neeson, which apparently obviously we're getting in the animated series.
Yeah, and I think I think the episode. I think we did an episode about the news. Which is what we normally do. I'm not reviewing things, and I think Liam Neeson was on record saying he wouldn't do TV, and I went on record saying that's it. He's thrown a curveball because he knows for a fact he's already recorded his stuff, and he is going to be Force Ghost in this series.
Yeah,
And then here we are proved right, which is fantastic.
Also, he's so sassy when he turns up. He's like, "Took you long enough, Obi-Wan."
That reminded me of like how they are in Phantom Menace. You know, when
exactly.
like when they when they're running from the droids, and when they board the ships, and when they meet Jar Jar, it was almost like I hadn't missed a beat of the last time they were together. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's what I loved about it. It was quintessential what we knew of their relationship, and it was straight away, throughout this series, we've seen Obi-Wan as the master, and suddenly now he is, in fact, back to being the Padawan, because obviously Qui-Gon Jinn's now going to teach him about the ways of, after you've passed through to become a Force Ghost. So he's going back to being a student again, and in some ways, I'm hoping that we might get a bit more of this.
And also the way he says to Obi-Wan that he's always been there. I think it shows that Qui-Gon has like always been watching over his Padawan. He's always probably heard Obi-Wan speaking to him, and then Qui-Gon says, "You just haven't been ready to see yet." And it's taken Obi-Wan to go from this very dark headspace to sort of fully embracing the Force for him to be able to actually properly communicate with Qui-Gon. He needed that connection to the living Force that Qui-Gon was always going on about in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and I think going back to what I said, I really feel in this moment, since arriving back in Tatooine, I think Obi-Wan really has found himself again. I think it's took Obi-Wan to find himself again for them to be ready to see Qui-Gon and be ready to go back under the tutelage of Qui-Gon. And I think the way Obi-Wan reacts is as if fantastic. You're here. I've got nothing else better to do. Let's go on this adventure together, just like old times.
It's such a hopeful way to end the series, I think.
Definitely.
It is indeed. The only thing I found funny was Liam Neeson's hair seems to have grown since he died.
Yeah, I noticed that. Very old and wisely.
But as I said, I'm not really that bothered about it. But that's just me. I noticed afterwards. But no, I thought it was good to have Liam back, which I thought he would be. I think the moment's beautiful. It's also not too long of a moment, which I think is good. I think down the line we might see, whether we see Obi-Wan speaking to Qui-Gon in a comic or in a novel or something like that about this learning. I can imagine that happening. Yeah, I think I'll let Cash finish up, and then I've got a few thoughts to let you know, guys, about.
Well, that is the end of... That is where Kenobi Part 6 finishes. That's where the series finishes. So, my main question is, from the entire series, what has been your favourite moment?
I think for me, one of my favourite moments was in I can't remember which episode it was, but when Kenobi, meets Reva, and they're waiting for Vader to come, and Kenobi says, I'm bringing Vader at you. But when Kenobi surrenders, it's very much Kenobi being the negotiator again, which I thought was like Clone Wars joke, the negotiator. So I love that. And again, part of Kenobi find himself out of the series. That's one moment where he starts to find himself again, where he goes out there and be's the negotiator. He's captured and he negotiates. One way or the other. The freedom, he managed to get everybody free and himself free. So classic Clone Wars Kenobi being the negotiator. I love that. I think other moments where the tragic moments and the beautiful moments, the moments where Obi-Wan and Leia have moments where you can see Obi-Wan's remembering Padme, remembering Anakin when he's looking at her, when he's talking to her. It's beautiful. The moment when he makes her believe, she doesn't believe he's Jedi, she doesn't believe in the Force, but when he saves her from falling because she's like, make me float, and he actually does to save her life. That's a big moment in their relationship. And that's when she starts to believe. So that was beautiful. And again, just the whole finale was just wonderful and tragic and beautiful. The way Anakin tells him, "You didn't destroy me. I'm not your failure. I chose to become this. I killed him." It's brutal. It's raw. It's emotional. It's tragic. And yeah, just the whole journey of Kenobi going from broken man to really finding himself again. and we get this very hopeful ending where I can see more Kenobi stories being told. Like I said, he's got that spaceship. You know, he's very happy to leave Luke with Beru and Owen. You know, so he can leave the planet if he needs to. Obviously, he's still not trying to draw too much attention to himself, but you know, he told Bale, if you need to contact me, please. That's something else as well. When Bale says, he tells Bale, if you need me, give us a call, and Bale says, hopefully not. But obviously, that is a new hope where that moment comes where it's the Death Star. This is the end of the galaxy. I need Obi-Wan, and obviously Leia goes to Obi-Wan with the plans. So I thought that was really, really cool. But yeah, just overall, love the feel, the tones of the show. Just love the Star Warsness of it, I suppose.
And I just
And what about you,
realised,
Hunter? What was your favourite moment?
well, I just realised we've actually forgot to discuss a scene that comes towards the end, and that is the scene with Vader sat on his throne, talking to the hologram of the Emperor.
Oh,
And
no,
obviously,
no, no, no. Palpatine's returned enough times. I deliberately skimmed over that.
well, I'm afraid at least this time when he returned, this was we didn't have some clone. This was definitely the Emperor, and it showed the power that he has over Vader or the manipulation, because obviously Vader is like, I'm going to hunt down Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is my mission. And Palpatine, cool and calm as ever, as we've known him to be, the master manipulator, gently shows that, actually, there's more to this. And he's basically saying exactly what the Grand Inquisitor has already said to Vader. But because it's coming from Darth Sidious, then Vader takes it, and then we suddenly see again he's back to being the apprentice. He's not the master. He is very much still being controlled by the Emperor, which obviously then brings that character perfectly into position for A New Hope. So for me, a lot of the stuff I've loved seeing Vader back in action. They've done it brilliantly, and that bit I had my qualms about him being in the series and everything, but the way they've done it has been very good. But I would now like to see an Obi-Wan series without Vader, and maybe Obi-Wan helping to set up the rebellion. But obviously that's not something that we know about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been speaking to people at work. If they do a season 2 of Kenobi, which they can do, it will be without Vader.
Yeah.
That story's been told here. It's been told to the end, and it's wonderful story, beautiful story. But yeah, I think the next it will be more Obi-Wan. What is he doing? Does he go off world a few times to help some people? Like he seems like he can do now. So I think that's a possibility. So for me, if they write a good enough story and it's a good, then do it. If they can't, then leave it. But the options there, which is fantastic. Another thing I loved it, just bringing Hayden back. I thought was wonderful, and I love he's seen since he come back at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago. I think, and then being back in the role here. I think his acting's been wonderful, especially in that scene, the flashback scene to him versus Obi-Wan on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple was fantastic. And then his delivery of his lines here in the tragic moment at the end of the episode again, wonderful. I feel the Emperor wasn't wanting to get him back off Kenobi for any other reason, but I think the Emperor just wanted to make him feel bad. So the Emperor very much manipulates him to say, "Oh, like you love Obi-Wan so much because he was your master, but I'm your master." It's you know what I mean. It's that was what it was about for me.
Oh yeah,
almost like an abusive relationship, an abusive partner. I don't think he cares if he goes hunting Obi-Wan, but I think he was just like putting the reminder in. You know what? Remember, he's your old master. Like I'm your current master, type of thing. So just putting that emotional daggers in, just to keep Anakin hurting, I think is what he did with what he said there. And obviously by keeping Anakin hurting is what keeps him on the dark side. I think he knows he needs to do that because I think he knows that there is some light in there. And the one thing Anakin never does is Vader never tries to overthrow the Emperor type of thing. Like, the Sith should want to destroy the Master to become the Master, but like this is where it's flawed, is where Vader never wants to do that because he's never actually fully evil, if that makes sense, in my opinion anyway. So almost like the Sith are broken at this point, and because that won't happen. If that makes sense.
It does. Totally agree with
Yeah.
that. Anakin never fully fell to the dark side. He's always he's flirted with the dark side, and while he is a Sith, he's never a true Sith.
Yeah, I like to think he's a Sith. He's stuck being a Sith. I don't necessarily think he wants to be one, and he doesn't want to succeed to be a Sith. He's just stuck doing it because he's made bad choices and there's no going back. You think until the very end, obviously with Luke Skywalker, but he's very much he's stuck. He's stuck in what he's doing. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like if you're stuck in a dead end job, but the job pays for your meals, so you need to do it to live. Do you know what I mean? It's not your dream job and you don't love it, but you have to do it to live. And it's like he's got himself in a situation where his family and his friends are dead or vanished, and he's just stuck here. And obviously, like Palpatine's his only friend he's had left. His only friend he's got left from when he was younger. So that's where he's stuck doing that. But yeah, I'm glad Hayden's back. He's done a fantastic job. Excited to see what he does in the Ahsoka series and what he does going forward. But I'm glad he's back, and let's use him as much as possible. If it's natural and if it's good story, I think let's use him.
It's good for. I think that's one thing that's come out of this series that is actually really beautiful, because to a certain degree, Revenge of the Sith and the sort of they didn't respond to Hayden to begin with, and that really didn't do his career any favors. So obviously we're now all these years down the line. He's come back to this character, and it's sort of served as a redemption because he's been given the chance to show what he can do, and that he wasn't just this whiny sort of character. That basically it was the script that made him, wrote the lines for him. And I think the script in this has actually, or the way the story's played out, has offered him a chance to hopefully see his career flourish and show what a good actor he really was.
Yeah, I
So
think you got to
it's
remember as
almost,
well. I think you got to remember as well that the people writing those articles that were calling him were people who didn't want to like it because it wasn't their original trilogy Star Wars, where it was Han,
yeah,
where it
exactly.
was Luke, where the people who were watching those movies and loving them didn't have a voice, but now them people do have a voice, and they love him being back and they love what he did.
Very true.
The prequels has always had an unfair rep, but I think they are fantastic movies. I always loved Hayden's performance in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. I'm one of the few. I feel I'm one of the few who absolutely loves Attack of the Clones, and I think Hayden's coming back now to a generation of fans who love the prequels, who love Anakin's character, and I think the fans now are so much more supportive than they were, perhaps 20 years ago when the prequels first came out. I think hopefully seeing that will make Hayden feel better about coming back to this role again, because the fans want him. I want to see him in Ahsoka. I think he would naturally fit into upcoming Star Wars projects if that's how the stories are written.
And if you've watched his interviews, he's glad he feels that he knows he's loved, and he knows that now anyway, and he's glad to be back. And I think they're definitely going to use him in Ahsoka. I think, and going forward, they can use him in many different places as well. So I think just a fantastic journey for him to be back, at the pinnacle, and also back producing awesome, wonderful moments that are deep and tragic as well. Yeah, I can't wait to see what we see him do next. And I'm sure we aren't going to have to wait too long. Do you think we'll get a season 2 of Kenobi Cat? What's the percentage you're putting on getting a season 2?
47%. I think it really depends how perhaps Deborah Chow could write another season that makes sense for Obi-Wan's character. What would what would she put him through next to continue his growth?
Well,
Because obviously,
she's told this story, so someone else could tell a story, couldn't they?
yeah, it could be somebody else, but Deborah Chow has done such a fantastic job with Kenobi. I think I would really like to see her do, if there was going to be a season 2, I would want Deborah Chow to at least be writing one of the episodes, because she's proven that she understands how to deliver a Star War. I mean, there's still loose ends from this series. I mean, we had that name drop of Quinlan Voss. We've got Obi-Wan now with a ship. We've got Haja out there trying to dodge the Inquisitors. We've got Roken probably helping to set up the rebellion. So there's definitely enough threads there to pick up for a season 2. Not to mention we have Qui-Gon teaching Obi-Wan. So
I think apart from Qui-Gon, all those other threads could be the one series. Do you think?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a possibility of pulling some of those together to make a series with the characters we've seen just without Obi-Wan. I would be very happy with that because I love Haja. Roken was amazing. Seeing more of Reva would be fabulous. Her progression from villain to maybe more of a morally grey character. So I definitely want to see the story threads picked up, whether that's in a season 2 of Kenobi, whether that's in a season of their own, or Star Wars isn't just television movies these days. The comic writers and the authors are carrying on so many of these stories in such perfect ways. So I do hope we get to revisit these characters somehow.
You're avoiding the question because you don't want to get caught out on the percentages. So, not talking about the story threads, because I think this all the story threads you mentioned will be picked up somewhere because it's a really good story. It could be told through comics, novels, books, but percentage wise, I need to know. I'm going to ask Jason the same thing. Don't worry, I'm going to give mine. Percentage wise, whether that's the same story threads or not, what percentage do you give on us getting Obi-Wan Kenobi 2? I'm going to say 60%. That's mine. I think I'm 60% certain that we're going to get it Obi-Wan Kenobi 2.
That's what my feeling was. I have to admit, it's the right sounds are coming out of Lucasfilm at the moment, and we know. Let's face it. They ran with the Mandalorian because that did them wonders, and I think the success of this series, the fact that both Ewan and Hayden seem keen to carry on working with Lucasfilm, as you say, and I completely agree. I think if they do another series, it has got to not include Vader. It's got to be a different story. They've done that story perfectly. We could have a Vader series where we see a bit more of Vader. I'd be happy with that. But at the same time, I do think Obi-Wan is such a loved character that they'd almost be foolish not to run with it, considering they've got nothing going on with the films at the moment. They've hit. In some ways, I think if they'd have done this as a film series, if this had gone out as the original trilogy, Lucasfilm could have redeemed themselves. So this has almost been an experiment for them, because let's face it, this could have been done as a trilogy of films, and it clearly was set out originally in that format. So, yeah, I think
Percentage though, Jason. Everyone's avoiding the question. What
I
percentage
said
are we
I'd
going to get
agree.
Obi-Wan Kenobi 2?
All right, I'm going to go higher. I'm going to say 75% certain. There's 25% chance, but I think 75% that they're going to go for it.
I'm sticking with my 47.
47, 60, and then what you say 75, Jason? Did you say?
Yeah, I'm going 75.
I love that enthusiasm. That's fantastic. I wish I had that.
I just think it's a no-brainer myself. As I say, Lucasfilm, in order to or Star Wars in order to survive, has got to start.
But
Not
it's not in
letting
danger,
down the
is it?
fan. It's this is
To
the thing.
survive, like, what do you mean by survive?
I mean that they. Let's face it, we were going into a state leading up to, obviously, the Mandalorian did Lucasfilm a big favour because people were, although personally I loved all the sequel films. I loved admittedly, Rise of Skywalker has its issues, and I think there was a lot of mistakes made there. Rogue One was a brilliant film. Solo, I hope they go back to Solo, and I hope we see more of what should have been a trilogy in itself. I think that was just poorly marketed, poorly dealt with completely. There was all the hoo-ha about Ron Howard coming in. I think Ron Howard did a brilliant job with what he did there, and I thoroughly enjoyed that film and watch it over and over again. So the fact that they're
But
not churning out films now and they've been focusing on television, I just think this almost goes back to show them that if they wanted to, they could do the films. Um, but I don't know what's going on at the moment with. I know obviously there's
I think it's just
is it
strategy. I think it's strategy. I don't think it's look or anything. I think they made Mandalorian. They knew what that would do for them. I think the movies that they greenlit in the first phase, they've all made them. I think the movies for the second phase are currently in development. So Taika Waititi's writing his movie, and he's been given the time to write that, and they're not rushing him. And he said he's probably not going to be shooting that for another year because he's still tightening up the script, and he's a very busy man. I think Patty Jenkins, she's writing a Rogue Squadron movie. Again, that's not ready to shoot yet, so give her the time to do that. And meanwhile, we've got Dave Filoni and John Favreau sort of in the Mandoverse, sort of creating their shows here. Where we've had Mandalorian, we've had Boba Fett, we've got Ahsoka coming. So I think
we've got
I just sometimes I worry about the phrase and things and saying that Lucasfilm needs to survive. I think Star Wars Celebration is just sold out in under an hour. I don't think they're in trouble of being surviving. I think they're thriving. Star Wars is thriving right now.
yeah, but what I mean is they've got to keep that momentum going. And what I'm saying, you're completely right there. But what I'm also saying is Boba Fett was originally going to be a film series, but because they got hurt by Solo and Rogue One, that went to television series.
I think that wasn't
Obi-Wan,
quite that way because I think that they obviously brought in Josh Trank to work on that as a movie, and again I think things change all the time. So they brought in Josh Trank to work on Boba Fett, and it was going to be a movie because they weren't doing TV shows. But then Josh Trank left the project after the whole incident with Fantastic Four and in his mental health and things like that.
yeah,
So I think that got shelved and then got morphed into what it is. So I don't think it was a case of Solo did bad, so Boba Fett's now a series. I think that's a dangerous line of thought to say that because it sort of
well,
it feeds into that idea that they're just making things up on the fly and reacting to stuff, which they do react to stuff and gets wrong. But I think Boba Fett became a series because they made the Mandalorian series, and then it did so well, and they're like, what it is? That's actually used the actual Mandalorian, the Boba Fett.
At the end of the day, George Lucas said the future of Star Wars was in television, and the writers are going to choose the medium to tell the best story.
Yeah.
Television allows much more time to tell a story than a film ever does. You can get the character development that you need. So I think, television is offering so much. Look what they've been doing with Stranger Things, of these massively long episodes so that they can get as much story in as they need. And I think that we're on a streaming service now. You're not limited to set times for a television show, and they can feel much more cinematic. But with that opportunity to tell a longer story in the long run, it opens up so much more creative potential than a movie. And I think, I stand by what I say. I wouldn't mind if there were no Star Wars movies, because Star Wars television is providing so much good story, and it's providing more Star Wars content because you're getting a longer series.
Yeah,
And
I completely I agree with the content side of things, but I think it's sad that we're now, you know, we're missing out on the big screen experience. But
But
like you
would
say,
you rather rush a movie and it'd be bad though? Like,
but
I think we need to let them take the time. I
if
think.
they could have done, it's like I say, this series could have clearly been a trilogy and could have done a beautiful. It could have been beautiful on the big screen. I'm not disputing that, and it is. They break it down for television. There was some of it. It was television side of it that I think if we could have seen it on the big screen would have been absolutely amazing. But like you say, at least we are getting Star Wars content. But I think it's sad that we are straying away from the cinema side of it because I think there is room for the cinema side of it to thrive. And I'm completely Taika Waititi. I hope he's given the time, and I hope we do see his film. The same with Patty Jenkins. It just worries me that so many times we've had these big announcements that this is going to happen, and then it keeps moving and moving. But like you say, they need to be given the time to produce stuff. But at the same time, the way Dave Filoni and James Dave brother John Favreau have created the Mandalorian, and the way John Favreau's got these brilliant stories. Dave Filoni's helped clearly pointing him in the direction of the canon and everything. And Dave Filoni is brilliant, and I cannot wait to see the Ahsoka series. And I'm also very pleased that a lot of people have said obviously John Favreau and Dave Filoni were not producers on this series, but there's a clear mention of the work that Dave Filoni did with the Clone Wars, because I believe at the end of every episode it actually says about Dave Filoni's contribution to Star Wars, which I think is vital at the moment.
Yeah.
But I just, maybe it is the older side that I like the idea of being able to go to the cinema and see a Star Wars film, and I
Yeah.
hope we haven't seen those days gone by.
So I love Star Wars movies. I love Star Wars TV. I honestly think we are going to get Star Wars movies again. They've got Patty Jenkins in a movie that they're actively developing. Same with Taika Waititi, actively developing a movie. We are going to get movies. I think what I want to stay away from, because I think it's very much, it does get talked about in the dark side of the Star Wars fandom, is that the moving things because Solo was bad. And I think Bob Iger, he's left Disney now, but his big plan, he bought Marvel, he bought Lucasfilm, he started Disney Plus. Disney Plus was his go away present to the company. Part of the strategy was Marvel and Star Wars both make lots of money at the box office, right? Solo didn't flop. It probably broke even. It wasn't catastrophic. So I think we need to see from that because it wasn't catastrophic. It was it pretty much break even. So makes money at the box office. But Bob Iger knew by having Marvel, which he purchased, and having Lucasfilm, which he purchased, but not only equal box office dollars for Disney, because Disney love making money at the box office, but also they can make content for the streaming service Disney Plus. And the only way Disney Plus works is if it has good original content in these huge IPs that he purchased. So I think it was always part of the strategy to have Star Wars content on Disney Plus, and it was always going to grow because they need to grow the subscriber base. They don't want what's happened to Netflix to happen, where subscribers start leaving. I think we are getting a lot of Star Wars on Disney Plus, and that's the strategy because that's Disney's trying to grow Disney Plus to be in the mecca of streaming. And I think we will get Star Wars movies, but we've had a lot of movies that came out in the first phase of Star Wars being owned by Disney. I think that was always the plan, and now Disney Plus is there and active. The plan is put content on there, and we'll still make movies, but again, I'd rather them take the time and develop the movie correctly rather than rush one, and we're not get the product that we deserve as fans. But I want both. I'm greedy. I want Star Wars movies and I want Star Wars on TV.
Same here.
And you want Obi-Wan series too.
Yeah, well, I'm 75% certain that's going to happen.
I hope so. I hope you're right. I really do hope. Time will tell. But I think looking at the way Ewan has been talking in the press and so, I think if they came at them, because for me the story wouldn't need to be as tragic and deep as the one they've just told. They could tell a more, not necessarily a light-hearted story, but it could be more of an adventure tale than a find himself tale, if that makes sense. So he
Definitely.
could go on an adventure and tell an adventure. So we've done the hard stuff. We've got him back to being Obi-Wan Kenobi now, so we can now be a bit more sort of light-hearted, bit more
Team him up
adventure
with
driven.
Quinlan. I mean, Quinlan is about as light-hearted as a Jedi can get.
Yeah, imagine if we got like these two back together again on an adventure, or
I think
maybe Quinlan.
Obi-Wan and Quinlan were not, the easiest of allies in the Clone Wars because of their
Yeah.
really different methods.
Mhm.
But it would be interesting to see them perhaps try to overcome that.
Well, how about season 2 could be, maybe Quinlan's gone missing, so Kenobi goes on the search.
Could well be.
Because I know they do have differences, but I think there is a big respect between them, and I think he'd want to help his friend, especially if you read Dark Disciple, the way Kenobi gives Quinlan the message from the council, doesn't he? And there's very much you can sense how much they care about each other in that book, I think. Jason, any closing thoughts on all of this Kenobi stuff? And then we'll put it to
No,
bed until season 2.
I I hope they do a second season, and I know I've mentioned it to Steve and some of the Jedi News guys that I've still, admittedly, I've this week I've rewatched the entire series, and I have found more of a love for it. I was beginning to feel the problem I've got, I think, is there was so much talk about this series, and what they delivered is everything that everyone wanted and expected. But there wasn't because everyone had talked about it and that there wasn't the surprises weren't so much surprises. We all expected Qui-Gon Jinn to appear. We all expected the Grand Inquisitor to survive. There was just I would have liked a few more surprises and stuff that we weren't expecting. But the problem is because this is such a well-known entity, it's difficult to do that. But it has been lovely to see the story told at last, and to see Ewan McGregor given the chance again to show absolutely how brilliant he was as the character Obi-Wan, and likewise Hayden as Anakin stroke Darth Vader. And I know, for him to actually I know he fought to be in the costume for Revenge of the Sith. So for him to actually be able to do a series in the costume and play Darth Vader properly, I'm really glad he got that chance. So yeah, in all, it's been beautiful. And I'm hoping that we see more of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But you know, that's in the hand of Lucasfilm. Likewise, as you say, in the hand of Ewan if he wants to carry on with it. But I'd love to find out more about what he did in between the time of A New Hope, because this series has made me convinced that he definitely didn't sit in that cabin on his own, talking to the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn.
I think you bang on there. Imagine if maybe it goes to Qui-Gon's like, oh, Obi-Wan, we need to go to this place. Maybe they go visit a few places, maybe mythical Force places. Maybe not Dagobah, maybe they do, but other places strong with the Force. It could be anywhere. The possibilities are endless, which I think I love. Kat, what's your final thoughts on the series and sort of where we've ended Kenobi?
I have grown to love Kenobi so much through this series. I think the acting has been absolutely incredible. The storyline has been so well written. As far as I'm convinced, Obi-Wan Kenobi is now episode 3.5 and vital viewing between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, because there is so much that happens between those two films that is explained in this series. I think it's just absolutely vital viewing, and I would like to see more. I love how the series ends on such a hopeful note, considering it started with Obi-Wan in such a dark and depressed place, for him to come out of that into this hopeful moment is so empowering. And yeah, I still want the adventures of Lola and Leia as well, though. So, but yeah, I've loved every minute.
I've got one question to ask each of you. So I'll ask you first, Jason. Hey, Jason, are you going
Yeah.
to Star Wars Celebration in London?
Yes. Oh, I cannot wait.
Hey, Kat, are you going to Star Wars Celebration in London?
As long as I'm not captured by an Inquisitor, you bet.
Well, I am too, and Ian, our other host, who hasn't been part of these reviews for work commitments, has tickets as well. So all of the Star Wars crew will be at Star Wars Celebration London. So I'm very, very excited for that.
Yeah, it was nail biting to the end. And I've got to thank you, Pete, for grabbing my ticket for me. But yeah, we're going to be there and hopefully finally get to meet some of the people that I've been talking to for all these years over fandom. And I'm looking forward to seeing what is bound to be an amazing show. And lots of fun things going on around the show as well.
Definitely. Kat, are you buzzing?
I think I'm not convinced the excitement has set in quite yet, because there's still some things to iron out, and getting the tickets was so stressful. I feel I've lost 2 years of my life just from that. But I think once things calm down and I can sort of fully take it in, I think I am going to get pretty excited.
Kat, what would you do if Adam Driver was doing autograph and photo ops, but it was £700? Would you sell a
Mortgage,
kidney?
loan, mortgage, loan, rob a bank, doesn't matter. I'd still manage it.
But I thought the restraining order was still in place.
Oh.
I've got no restraining order. Oh, be quiet.
Oh, imagine that, the stormtroopers come and taking Kat away.
Oh,
Look,
no. That cannot
trust
happen.
me,
That
I
cannot
can
happen.
arrange that.
I'm a First Order loyalist. They can't do that.
Oh dear. No,
But
there's
no,
I'm looking forward to seeing all the guys in the costumes and that, and I am hoping that I might be able to debut a costume myself, but I've got to really work on it, and I've got to lose a bit of weight.
well, you've got time, plenty of time to do it. We'll definitely dive into Celebration in more detail in future episodes, I think. But thank you very much, guys, for coming on this Obi-Wan Kenobi journey. I think the series has been fantastic. It's been deep, tragic, emotional. I think it's very. I think, as you mentioned, Jason, I think it's. I've rewatched every episode a couple of times. I think the whole series is very rewatchable, which is a good thing. And I'll definitely be rewatching it all now. All episodes are available. Sort of binge watching it is sort of one thing. But no, thank you very much, listeners. Thank you much for joining us on this Obi-Wan Kenobi journey. Jason, where can the listeners find you on social media?
On social media, it's at Hondo Ling or at Jason Ling photography.
You nearly nailed it.
I nearly
You
did.
nearly
I'll
nailed
get
it,
there one day.
that last bit. But I was about to say he's nailed it, and then, but no, the running joke continues. But no, definitely check out Jason on social media, and definitely check out his photography company on social media as well. Kat, where can the listeners find you on social media?
You can find me at Cat Kylo on Twitter. Always happy to talk Star Wars and anything Kylo Ren.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star. You can also find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Star Wars Podcast. If you're listening on Apple Music or on Spotify, you can leave a review. So please, give us a top star rating. Nice little comment in the reviews would be fantastic. Just helps us gives us more visibility as we move up the leaderboard, and also helps us in booking guests. If you're listening on any other type of podcast forum or app, and it gives you the ability to leave a review, please just consider taking a moment, leave us a top review. Again, it just helps support us. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolan Dart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hover cart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the HoloNet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Kol. I am the chief here on Kamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pac 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
Ah, so you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad.
We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.